Let's get started. Folks, drop your location and local time in the comments. Now, imagine a Sunday by the lake, so still you can hear a fishing line plop. And that's exactly where Robert hopes to stay. He's tinkering with a loose dockboard, wondering if he'll have cereal for lunch or just stick with coffee, when fate decides to drop a wild card through his grandmother's cabin window. The crash is loud enough to startle the fish and maybe even wake his late grandma. In stumbles Barbara Jones, HOA president, tottering on luxury heels and swinging a bag like it's a judge's gavel. Without so much as a hello, she's inside, trailing broken glass and outrage, filming her entrance for posterity or Instagram, no one's sure which. Barbara rants about property lines, community standards, and color schemes with the passion of someone auditioning for a legal drama. Except her evidence is a casserole of old grudges, half-remembered bylaws, and whatever pops up first in Google. She claims Robert's dock is too long, the boat too blue, the paint too not beige. All this while Robert's friend Brandon calmly spoons cereal at the table, entirely unbothered. Historians still argue whether his non-reaction is zen, apathy, or just good breakfast etiquette. But Barbara hates being ignored even more than she hates clashing color palettes. She grabs Brandon's shoulder, demanding respect, and gets the exact opposite. Brandon looks up, and something in that glance freezes her solid. The phone clatters to the floor, and Barbara runs out sobbing, having discovered briefly that some battles are unwinnable. At least before noon, Barbara peels out in her BMW, firing off lawsuits and threats through the window like confetti. Robert and Brandon share a look, half bemused, half wondering if anyone's ever tried calling Ghostbusters for an HOA exorcism. Among the chaos, a ketchup packet from Barbara's bag sits on the floor, a strange trophy for a stranger day. If only the circus ended there, before Robert can even sweep up the glass. Barbara's threats materialize this time, with her lawyer husband Rick in tow. Rick is a walking stereotype, expensive suit, overgelled hair, and a briefcase heavy with paperwork and self-importance. He tries to intimidate Robert with legalese, listing off violations and penalties. But his paperwork keeps blowing away, and his arguments are as flimsy as the HOA's community standard for mailbox height. Brandon, meanwhile, listens closely, occasionally correcting Rick on outdated code small details that make the lawyer sweat. Barbara films the chaos, intent on documenting her own downfall, though scholars will forever debate if the world needed a blooper reel of HOA fails. Then comes the gnome incident. The inspector measures a garden gnome and declares it too whimsical by 2 inches. The neighborhood grapevine will talk about this for years. All the while, Brandon keeps collecting details, names, dates, every threat and violation. The plot is thickening like a pot of oatmeal left too long on the stove, and the quiet hero at the table might just be more than he seems. By sunrise, Barbara's lost any pretense of subtlety. She's back at the cabin, storming through what's left of the front door this time, decked out in what she clearly thinks is official regalia. Navy blazer, clipboard, and a security badge probably from a Halloween aisle. With her, Rick, crumpled but still stubborn. Deputy Smith, whose only authority seems to be a talent for sweating, and a shifty county inspector who looks like he gets nervous around tape measures. Barbara launches into a grand speech, threatening to ruin Robert's business, boasting about her connections, and promising a legal reckoning for every fish, duck, and coffee mug in sight. Rick, desperate to regain the upper hand, tries to threaten Brandon directly, but the move backfires spectacularly. Brandon stands up, calm as ever, pulls out a badge, and announces without drama, but with absolute authority, that he's the state attorney general. The effect is nuclear. Barbara's jaw nearly hits the floor. Rick collapses into a kitchen chair, and the inspector bolts out the door, possibly for good. The deputy's entire posture shifts as he realizes the real law has arrived. Barbara, always one for spectacle, is suddenly all tears and mascara, wailing about entrapment and rights. Rick mutters something about attorney-client privilege, but Brandon cuts him off with the coolness of someone who's seen it all, reminding everyone that privilege doesn't protect crimes. And their confession is now on record. The state police are called. Real backup for the first time in this saga. And as Barbara is led away in cuffs, she shouts one last threat. "You have no idea what you've started." She's accidentally right. As the dominoes start to fall, the network Barbara and Rick built unravels fast. Deputy Smith, faced with prison or cooperation, sings like a canary. He admits Barbara kept a hit list of families to drive out, collecting bribes for every household forced to sell. Investigators trace Barbara and Rick's scheme across counties, targeting elderly couples, single parents, immigrants, anyone vulnerable, harassing them with fake citations and bogus lawsuits until they sold low. Properties flipped for huge profits. The lakefront became a gold mine built on fear. Neighbors who had suffered in silence like the Martinez family start returning, emboldened by news of justice. Barbara's reign of terror, as some call it, is finally broken. The flower show is renamed the Dandelion Festival. A little dig at Barbara's legacy after all. Dandelions, like justice, have a way of coming back stronger, no matter how hard you try to root them out. Scholars are already arguing if this was the most cathartic HOA revolt of the decade, or just a really weird Tuesday by the lake. With Barbara and Rick out of power, the investigation mushrooms. Federal agents dig through a mountain of old HOA files and find years-long multi-county conspiracy shell companies, bribed officials, fake inspections, and forced sales totaling millions. Even Robert's late grandmother, Helen, emerges as an unsung hero. Her refusal to sell the cabin years before had actually triggered the first investigation. The feds uncover her secret files letters, photos, recordings showing she collected enough evidence to blow the whole thing open if only time hadn't run out. Brandon, now a local legend, works with investigators to help families reclaim stolen properties, recover funds, and repair the community's battered trust. Rick loses his law license and faces bankruptcy, while Barbara finds herself a social outcast. Her name scrubbed from every board and club in town. The assets they'd squeeze from neighbors, the BMW, the cabin, even that designer purse, are seized. The proceeds distributed to their victims. New state laws roll out, putting guardrails on HOA power and launching support for families scarred by abuse. Deputy Smith is fired and prosecuted. The building inspector gets jail time. Even the county commissioner is forced to resign. Historians will argue for years whether this scandal redefined a region or just confirmed what everyone already suspected about unchecked HOA power. Yet, healing happens. The Martinez family moves back, joined by others who had fled. Some decide to start fresh elsewhere, but with restitution in hand and dignity restored. The community holds crowded town hall meetings, reforms oversight, and builds the future together. Robert, with Brandon's friendship, turns the old cabin into a symbol of resistencia, place for fishing, laughter, and remembering that even against corruption, decency wins if people stick together. As another summer drifts by on the lake, the ripples from Barbara's downfall soften. Neighbors wave more easily now. Laughter travels farther across the water. Robert sits on his dock, sometimes joined by Brandon, sometimes just by the quiet, thinking how thin the line is between peace and chaos and how much stronger a community is when folks have each other's backs. Sunset stretches across the water, gold and gentle, and the old cabin once a battleground is finally just home again. Now and then, a car will pass on the distant road, but it never slows. Barbara's story becomes one of those tales told with a smile and a shiver at the 4th of July barbecue. A reminder that even the boldest troublemaker is no match for truth, tenacity, and a little help from good friends. So as evening falls, and the last glimmers of daylight fade behind the trees, Robert listens to the lake breathe steady, calm, unafraid.